Well,
I think we're live.
welcome, Therapy Flow community. We're live. You're watching the recording. We're talking about the flywheel effect for your therapy practice, the information you need to know to really develop two kind of core segments, launch and actually convert clients from your marketing successfully. So we're going to go through kind of the four stages of this marketing flywheel. And then we're going to also talk about how to use this flywheel as the roadmap to delegation. We all have the dream of not being the butt in the seat that does all of the work. I know that's especially true for a lot of our therapy practices. So we're going to dive into the two sides of this coin, building great marketing in general, what's needed there for your therapy practice, and then how to slowly delegate that and get that off your plate.
Yeah. So really getting started with idea generation here. Um, because we are creating a flywheel, I think you'll notice that you're just a few steps away from having another idea that you'll have to implement. And so I think the important thing to know as you're kind of coming into this is you will have many ideas and you will be able to execute on many ideas. So just do something, right? Make a good decision, do a little bit of research, come up with a good enough strategy, and then go, right? So that's kind of the beautiful thing about this, because this is now a process. You don't have to hem and haw on what is the best idea. You just have to come up with a good enough idea that won't devastate your practice. So come up with a good enough idea that you can execute on, that'd be worth a shot, that you wouldn't have regrets taking, and then move along.
Idea generation is really, we're talking about blog topic ideas, video hooks for your social media, ad ideas of how do we get in front of our ideal client. Um, Genuinely, some people are really good at coming up with ideas. Good ideas are born out of knowing your ideal client, their needs, their wants. They're also born out of some good base understanding of marketing. If you don't know what a video hook is, that concept, you can't generate video hook ideas. So you kind of have to know, right? A blog topic ideal, the top 10 things you need to know about therapy. Like you kind of have to have some semblance of structure when you know what ideas you're trying to create. But at the end of it, it's all based in the content for idea generation that gets you in front of you and connects with them and communicates them. Good marketing really does that. And that then leads into the actual then physical content production, the writing of the articles, the filming of the scripts, the option of the SEO process or the physical ad writing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've educated yourself a little bit. You have some ideas here. Now it's time to actually produce the material. So go out there and do the thing. Write the blog, run the paid ad, produce that video, put it out, let people see it, and create it in a way that's going to be helpful for you and for your audience. So go out, create that actual idea.
I think this is where a lot of uh, individuals can get stuck because as a practice owner, you're like, I'm a content creation expert. I don't know how to edit my videos, or I don't want to write my blogs, or I don't want to be the one that writes the ads. Uh, and I'd say we just have to separate these two stages sometimes of idea generation to content physical production. There are and I'm kind of skipping to the delegation phase, so we'll come back to this. But just know that these are very two distinct activities, and we need to figure out how to make them work together if you want to outsource this. Let's talk about the next step. Once you've come up with the idea, you've produced the content, whatever that means, then it's talking about content implementation. This is physically posting those videos on social media, scheduling that blog to go out into your website, physically building that Facebook ad inside of the Facebook Ads Manager and pressing go live. This is just doing the thing. Networking can also fall into this category. This would be showing up to the doctor's office or sending the email for the script you wrote and saying, hey, do you want to connect, or whatever it is from there.
Yeah. Take the action, get the eyeballs.
Do the thing.
do the thing. The next bucket is the results, the optimization, the data collection. This is where you really just dial in and look at what just happened, right? You just had an idea, you just created the thing, and you just did the thing. And so there were probably all kinds of things that looking back, you probably could do better, right? How could you get better ideas? How can you improve your ideas with the results that you've received? How can you look at the material that you created and how could you create it faster? How could you create it better? How could you improve the quality? How can you make it just a little bit more tantalizing? How can you make it, how can you take it one step further? And then on the implementation side, how can you get more people to see it? How can you take action in a way that's maybe less painful to you or less costly in some capacity or less? So look back at everything you've just done and prepare and improve for the next run at doing the thing again. This
Yeah.
is set up standardizations, set up trainings, document how you've done it, so that the next run, you'll be able to do it better and faster and simpler and engineered for performance.
There's two stories that I hear all the time from the practice owners we work with and when we first get started with them. The first is on SEO. I've been doing SEO for 6 months, 18 months, and I'm just not seeing the results. But they don't know their website traffic volume. They don't know which blogs are getting clicked on and read. They just aren't measuring or looking at anything. If you walk into another person's therapy office and you're like, hey, you want a network? And they cuss you out, you get pretty immediate feedback, right? But most marketing does not give you quite that same. Social media is kind of a nice thing because in the first day, the first week, you can kind of see, hey, did people watch my video or not watch my video? People vote with their feet, but the cycle of people voting with their feet for SEO is just a little bit longer because sometimes it takes it for the article to get scooped up, for other things to get pushed out, for it to get ranked, all of that good stuff. But if you aren't measuring it, and if you wait 6, 12, 18 months and you're just repeating the same broken playbook and you haven't improved the process at all, it's hard to expect qualitative improvements. Same thing happens with a Google Ads. You went through the whole work of saying, I need an ad. What do I need an ad about? Oh, depression. Okay, let's make the ad. So you create and you write up a Google ad campaign, and then you build it in the ad launcher, and then you launch it, you implement it. But then we hear all the time, I actually don't know if my ad is working. I see that I'm getting clicks. I think I'm getting more phone calls, but I don't know how many of those are coming from Google. I don't know how many of those are actually converting into paying clients. So we're skipping this last critical step. So you never then restart the process. You don't go launch another ad. You don't go and change the way you're doing your SEO articles to improve it. You don't restart the flywheel. And that's typically the core issue here is we're pulling out one of these steps is, okay, we did all 4 steps, but then we don't restart at idea generation. Or maybe we're constantly thinking of ideas, but we have a really high failure rate of ever going and producing content. And somewhere in this flywheel is a step that's missing. So you aren't cyclically going through it over and over and over again. And sometimes, and we can harp on any one of these as the failure point, and it is a different failure point for almost every practice.
Yeah, I'll include also in sort of those caveats, the need for time. So you've heard like SEO takes time, social media takes time, marketing takes time, networking takes time. And sure, they do take time, but they take time in the form of forming this flywheel. They don't
Mm.
take time in doing something, sitting there and waiting for something to happen or for something to change. And so the production improvement process, that is what takes time. And so and we'll use SEO here because I think this is like universally known as the time taker. It's like really good. You want it and
We
it's
do say
great,
it.
but it does take time, right? Like it
Yeah.
takes time. And so, but where this kind of falls apart is I think when you have these ideas, you're creating content, you're implementing the product or the strategy, and you're never reassessing what's happening. Or if you are reassessing, you're just maybe like looking at your stats and seeing if it improved. And you're not necessarily improving the actual production. You're not actually improving the ideas. You're not actually improving based on results. I also hear this with things like Psych Today profiles or something like, hey, can you look at my Psych Today profile? And so the first question we have to ask is, well, do you have your data, right? Because otherwise you're just having objective opinions, I guess I should say, not objective. You're just having opinions, not based in data on what things to possibly change or edit. And so having and creating focal points for yourself while you're going through this process is going to be massively helpful, and producing this flywheel in a way that occurs quickly is also the biggest goal you should have. I think it's Sam Altman from OpenAI. Love him or hate him, but he says you should produce the fastest iterating company. Produce the fastest iterating company. And what he means is produce a company that iterates on a flywheel like this, in the fastest manner possible, because in that way you will improve. You'll have less of a headache over time because you'll be like, we're doing the same things and you're expecting a different result. Or you're finding that you're grinding gears because you're having to tell your staff the same things, or you're having to do a lot of the work. Like, why am I answering questions about this topic all the time? It's probably because the flywheel hasn't been iterated on well enough. And so getting yourself sprung means iterating fast.
Yeah. Let's
Even
talk
when
about
there's a
improvement
timeline.
cycles. Yeah, let's talk about improvement cycles and then how this attached to delegating. If you're a solo practice, if you're just starting your business, even if you're a group practice, like this whole flywheel might be or is often currently on your plate. Then you try and go hire a vendor, you bring on a virtual assistant, or you try and involve an admin, and it feels really difficult. It feels really difficult. Let's go through the 4 stages. On the idea generation side of things, this is honestly where the magic happens. Bad ideas produce bad results or no results. what and so if your video idea topic process, your blog idea topic process, your ad topic process, whatever it is, isn't going to resonate with your ideal clients, it's not going to get results. We've all seen those Instagram pages that post nothing but all the time, right? And they have 800 followers and they get 2 likes on their photos. And if you hire a social media company that doesn't have the ability to generate any quality ideas of any kind for your ideal clients, things are going to break down really, really quickly because there's no potency in the process that's being pursued. And to make this really successful is you don't have to feel the pressure of being always the content creator or the content implementer. However, if the resources and the people that you're working with, if they don't have the ability, the skill to generate good ideas that are going to resonate and drive good quality content, the rest of this will fail from the onset.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of little pieces in here that, especially early, you may not want to do at all. And I think as a solo work group, I think oftentimes you become the limiter because you create an environment where you don't want to do it the first time or the first few times yourself. And you just jump to this like outsourced position. And so Josh was just talking about something that we've seen extremely prevalent, sort of working in the space, and that's not like kind of figuring it out yourself and just relying on someone else to do it, to try to like figure it out for you. And you're the therapist oftentimes, and you know your client so deeply that not producing the material the first time or setting the standard actually does a disservice to your clients and to your practice.
Yeah.
And so as you're kind of going through these segments, just maybe consider that, kind of processing through it.
And this is where when we get into content production, if you have a good idea, if you have a good wireframe, if you have really good directional content, it can be sometimes pretty easy to pass it off to someone to get it to the finish line. There's all the time, right? They act out someone else's script, but they bring it to life. Ghost writers take the idea and the premise of someone that wants to talk about, and they actually put it into physical words, because they just know how to construct the process or the element. Some of the things that I say is, generate the ideas, create the blog structure, and get some of your therapists to write the blogs. Do kind of the 80% of the work in terms of what you need out of it and structure out of it. It's 80% of the work, but it's fast. It's the fast part of the work often if you're quickly move through idea generation. And then they can spend the time to craft the words and do the process, or an admin on your team, and you can construct it and go from there. Be the seed generator of the ideas and of the format and of the structure. At least own that process if the people around you can't own that process, because then maybe it will be easy or to get someone to do the content production side of thing. If you have a really good idea and you can put in a little Word document some of the social media content, yeah, a social media person might be able to make a really nice looking infographic out of that content, kind of piece some of the things together really quickly. And go from there. I have a virtual assistant on my team that makes LinkedIn carousels from the newsletters that I write. All of those words are mine. She's just doing a process of distilling all of the ideas and the processes that are in there. Takes her a lot of time to put the infographic together, but it's the full idea of it, and the valuable pieces of the content came from me and my process, but the 3, 5, however many hours it takes her to make each infographic, so it's actually a valuable thing. I don't have to do that step because she's being the content generator for that piece.
I'll make one extra addition here because it's funny. I talked about this last week and it kind of blew some people's minds. But as the practice owner, you're responsible for revenue generation in the practice. And you're also responsible for sort of being the tastemaker, the pace setter, and the expectation setter. You're the chief accountability officer in a lot of ways. And so, what's really hard is when you turn events onto, we've just found it as therapists. Sorry, guys. But when you turn tasks onto therapists, it becomes really unreliable. And when you need something to get done, it needs to get done, right? You want, like, I see practices that are like, and I just use blogs in this case because Josh, you just brought it up. But
Hey,
you
listen
want
here. I know where you're going. I agree.
you want the therapist to do the blog, but it's like, dude, I just can't get the blogs out of these therapists in any time frame. And a quick recommendation I made, and this just comes from iteration, right? This comes from ideas, like active problem solving here. Write 99% of the blog and just ask for your therapist to give their opinion on 1 or 2 sentences of the blog, and just have them send you a 1 or 2 sentence opinion, and then drop their 1 or 2 sentence opinions on the blog. It's a great way to just get them involved. It requires very little action, and then set a timeline because it's very little work here, guys. So give me your opinion on this one paragraph by the end of the week. Okay. So have 4 or 5 or 6 blogs queued up, ask for 4 or 5 or 6 opinions, and then have it done by the end of the week. It's a really good way to not have the therapist create the idea, create the content, execute on the content. And it's a great way to just involve them, get a little bit of activity from it, and a secret way to leverage ChatGPT in a way that doesn't make it feel so AI written and driven. And so drop that. You'll give your therapist the creds. That feels always good. And then that way you can take a lot more control and ownership over the process where you can. So how much can
And
you
if
just do?
And if you're willing to invest in your team, an admin, a virtual assistant, I'll use that person on my team that does LinkedIn carousel posts. For like a month, I had her make, almost 2 months, I had her make posts. And then I sat down with her every week and I reviewed them live with her. I was the tastemaker. I said, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is whatever. And she learned my process and taste. Standard operating procedures aren't just about structural implementation. Click this, do this, X, Y, and Z. They're also about setting the standard for tastemakers. That's why businesses have brand guidelines. Use these colors, use this font. That's a form of of setting boundaries around the taste that you want. And sometimes you just have to take the time to train the person on the taste and put implementation, show examples and other things. This is even an example that we did a website masterclass with someone a couple of weeks ago in our program. This was his great recommendation, is like, hey, do you have a catalog of the websites, right, that you want your website to feel like and look like, so that way we can understand and you can train us on the taste and the vibe that you're going for, right? If you're going to hire a social media company, if you're going to hire an ads company, if you're going to delegate it to a team member, even inspiration for yourself, know how to curate the taste and train that both into the content and then to the next stage of the content implementation. And this is just about outsourcing implementation. There's low skill work. Literally anyone can post a video on social media. Everyone does. So this should be fairly simple, but often you're trying to get someone that only has the skill of posting social media videos to do the first two steps too. Make an image and come up with good ideas. And so you see then what they post and you're like, don't love that. We hired a social media person a couple years ago, and he clearly had really good proficiency in managing a high volume content calendar. What I mean by that is he could handle putting out 3 to 10 pieces of content a day successfully, which is a process, kind of management, that type of process. He also, I knew from the start, wasn't going to be a good idea generator. So I was like, great, I have to be the one that creates the content. But I was relying on him to also do the video editing and the content cutting, and it just was not to taste. He was the correct person to do the content implementation, was not the correct person to do any of the content formatting or editing before we got to posting it. And I fired him about a month into it because it was not what we needed and wanted at all. And at first I was frustrated, but for me, it was just a failure of, great, I filmed the video, but content production, I needed to have someone else involved in that process. Either I should have edited it or someone else should have been on the team to curate it before it got passed up for massive implementation. And this is how the flywheel can break down at different stages if we don't correctly line up the boxes to make sure they're all being checked when we're doing production with additional team members outside of ourselves.
Yeah, I'll touch on one last item for like maybe a key tip on the data collection or like result optimization process, guys. I would imagine this kind of like the stock market tickers. You guys have all seen it, where it's like even the biggest companies in the world have ups, they have downs, they have ups, they have downs. But if you look on a long enough time frame, it's all up, right? For the most part. sometimes people don't recover, but for the most part, it's all up. If you ask for any like stock market or financial person's sort of idea or opinion on the market, they're going to tell you it's up every year on average from like the last 200 or 300 years. The market's up like 12% is the typical thing.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it though, in any given month or even a quarter, there's ups, there's downs, there's ups, there's downs. And so I would consider looking at your results and optimization process like that. Sometimes you're going to make a test and it's going to go down, and that's going to tell you what to not do. And then you go back to the step and try something else, and maybe it goes down again, and that'll tell you another feedback loop, and try it again and try it again. And maybe you get a few no's. Sometimes it's all down for a while until you find something that finally cracks, and then it starts going up. At the end of the day, you only need to have one more win than you have losses, and that's it. And sometimes it only takes one win to correct for 1,000 losses. And so keep that in mind. Keep trying things. You only are down and out if you give up and stop. Okay. And so keep that in mind. And also don't be discouraged by trying something and it not working. I think if you try something and it doesn't work, and that's the reason why you leave the flywheel process, or that's the reason why it takes you longer to iterate, that's going to be the death of your business. And so iterate fast, be okay with the downs in the stock market, and just know that an up is coming as long as you continue to iterate and continue to produce.
We could run a masterclass on what I'm about to say next, and it ties into the ups and the downs that you just described. the process of building successful marketing and the rhythms of successful marketing is very different than the management of successful processes. The process of building and launching Google ads for the very first time and optimizing them is very different than managing those long term. The process of building a successful SEO strategy versus just executing long term on an SEO strategy that's working. One is macro ups and downs, you're massive testing, massive building, massive iteration. The other one's kind of micro in some ways and more rhythmic and cadence. Just to know that building and managing are also two very different skills when it comes. And as Attilio said earlier, like that pressure, you are the builder, you are the revenue generator. And I'll kind of leave you on one last question is which marketing will make you the most money if you outsource, and which marketing will make you the least money if you outsource, if you even outsource correctly. And let that be a guiding question of like, can you risk outsourcing certain marketing, or do you need to hold on to it yourself to make sure it actually gets done and it gets built to the point of success? Can we risk outsourcing it for it to be managed and have that successfully? Are the benchmarks, is the flywheel in place? I think a lot of people expect marketing providers, admin, virtual assistants, agencies to build the marketing flywheel from scratch. But for instance, if you go and get a website built by you, they might write some good copy on it. They might not. They might implement the website. They might make it look really, really pretty, or they might set it up all correctly. But did they teach you or show you or put any rhythms in place for tracking the data and seeing if it's converting and any rhythms after that? They did not actually perform a full flywheel for a healthy website strategy. They did a big piece of it, but not all of it. And maybe you thought that, hey, this is all that's needed. Follow the flywheel, kind of follow the smoke, make sure all the boxes are being checked when you go to build new marketing, and then make sure those boxes keep getting checked as you cycle through the flow, through the flywheel over and over and over again.
Guys, best of luck. It's not easy, but it is very possible. And I just want to maybe encourage you guys at the end of this conversation today. If you tuned in, it's probably because our description was imagine waking up to a world where your marketing effortlessly attracts the therapy clients you need. And so how to get that world is through this flywheel. So keep it up. You got this.
We'll catch you guys soon.